welcome back to another episode of the pod. Making some slight changes this week. I hope you like it. Got this fancy new microphone here, so hopefully you could hear me crystal clear. All right. No better time than the present. We are back. Episode 4 of the Wise Lemon podcast. Before I go any further, gotta keep that thing on me. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate everybody for coming back to another episode. I hope everyone has had a beautiful week. Dropping these on Sundays, as you well know. A little bit has changed since the last Sunday. I am another year older. Had my birthday, March 19th, 2000. Shout out to all my Pisces out there. But had an incredible time. Was out there in Los Angeles. I hope everybody enjoyed the previous episode. I know we had a change of scenery, and we are now firmly back to the cave, as we lovingly call this beautiful place. So, a couple of things that I wanted to touch on today. Couple different topics, but one of the things that I wanted to discuss was something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, something that has been crucial in my development as a young man, as a person, and just as somebody who is a curious individual. And something I wanted to talk about was the value of books. Books, historically, have been one of the most valuable things in our society. It's the first time we documented information, moving from an oral tradition into one of written knowledge. To be able to pass that down, obviously, is a lot more concrete than passing down stories. Because, people change things. If you ever played a game of telephone, pretty sure you've seen how it ends up. But books, historically, have always been an incredibly valuable thing in our society. And nowadays, I see people are increasingly moving away from books and the value of books. I know nowadays a lot of people are like, hey, man, I don't learn that way. I'd much prefer to, I'm a hands-on learner. I like watching videos. I like listening to things. And I'm not here to say one's right or one's wrong. The only thing that I wanted to talk about today was the value that it's given to me. And I wanted to start it off with a story because I always did not love to read. That is something that I kind of developed through time. If I had to pinpoint a specific time, I'd probably say early college days was when I started enjoying to read. And the story behind that being, shout out to my mom, to my mother, she incentivized me $100. She said, Zade, if you read this book, I will give you $100. The book was Untethered Soul. It was a spiritual book, and there was a lot of incredible things that they talked about in the book. One of them being, and the thing that's kind of stuck with me the most, it kind of talks about, looking inward or looking outward. And in this book, they talk about the example of people who typically look outward to fill whatever they feel inside that maybe they feel incomplete, lack fulfillment, lack purpose, whatever that case may be. If you're looking outwardly for that sense of purpose, material desires will never satiate, will never satisfy that need. You will always be looking, and we've seen the story play out a million times when, you're like, oh, everything would be great if I just had that house. And then you get the house, and then all of a sudden you move in the goalposts, and it's, oh, it would all be great. Yeah, I got that house, but what if I had a Ferrari? That'd be pretty sweet. And then one Ferrari becomes two, Ferraris move in the jets turn into yachts, whatever the case may be. The idea being, these physical things will never satisfy you. Maybe it is for the first week, and maybe you're like, oh my God, I'm proud of my achievement. I'm glad that I was able to do these things. But then all of a sudden, it loses its lust, it loses its shine, and all of a sudden you're looking for something else. And what they talked about in the book was, instead of looking outward and looking for material desires to fill that gap, we'll call it, that you can look inward. That you can be introspective, that you can reflect, that you can ruminate on your life, your decisions, and your values, and through that rumination, you find peace. And there's a lot of quotes that I could say that illustrate this, but the one that sticks out the most to me is one that I read recently, my Discipline is Destiny book, shout out Ryan Holiday, and it is, the less you desire, the freer you are. And nowadays, we got marketing. You see advertisements from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. There's constantly messaging to you, telling you, you need this, you need that. Like, yeah, your life's cool, but wouldn't it be better if you had some Nike shoes? right? It's that kind of idea where it's you're not enough, you need something else. But in reality, especially nowadays in 2026, we make things very complicated when this life has been and should theoretically always be simple. Going back to what makes you happy, the little things in life, things that you deem are important and not what other people tell you are important. There was a beautiful theory that was discussed in a book that I read not too long ago. It was talking about the theory of mimetic desire, and the idea being we don't really know what we want, so we're drawn to, subconsciously or overtly, to what others want. This rat race, so to speak. Oh, we need the car, we need the money, we need the education, we need to do the things that we've been told are the right things to do, as opposed to thinking independently, trailblazing your own path, understanding, maybe everybody else is doing this, but for what I want to achieve, what I want to do, I'm going to go this way. You can't live an extraordinary life by making ordinary decisions. And sometimes you do need to stick out from the pack, and it is awkward. It is potentially, you could get ostracized. You're going to get judged potentially. But at the end of the day, if you're not marching to the beat of your own drum, you're marching to somebody else's. And I don't think that's all that great. So that was kind of devolved into a lot there. But books and the value of books and reading that initial book, The Untethered Soul, and what that gave me, my mom said, "Zay, you read this book, I'll give you $100. Flip through the book. Font was pretty big. It was maybe a little over 100 pages. So I took her up on that offer. And then from there, after reading this book and taking what I took from it, I realized I enjoy reading, which was a surprise to me because at the time, the only time I was reading was in school. And in school, they're not really asking you what you think. They're not really asking you if you want to read this book. They're just giving it to you. It's assigned reading. It's not something you willingly chose to do or that you were interested in the slightest. And I think that is the real disconnect. And I think that is honestly an intellectual crime to have people get soured on reading so early, because what reading does and what reading gives you is so important. And what I'd ask yourself is, I'm just throwing this out, big question for the group. When's the last time you read a book? No judgment. Obviously, this isn't a live conversation. I'm not going to hear your answer and comment on it. This is just something I wanted to pose to the group and the audience listening to this, because I think it is very important. And sometimes people are, they don't think about it. There's some very basic things that people don't get asked sometimes, and you'd be surprised at the answers and what those answers could lead to. A lot of interesting insights. And I would just encourage you, pick up a book and, find something that interests you. Because if you think about these books, a lot of these books, and there's some old, classic, timeless books that are from some of the greatest minds we've ever seen. And to think that you can't learn from those individuals is crazy. You know what I mean? Aren't you the slightest bit curious to hear what they have to say? The kind of thoughts they had, the insights they had, the observations they had of their society at the past, and maybe if it applies to the society we're living in today. I think that is something that, for me personally, as a lover of history, I've always appreciated. And that's the thing about history. It's touch and go at every moment. It could have changed in a million different ways. But to read these stories and understand the situations and the circumstances that these people of history and these names that have made it through the test of time that we know today had to endure, I think is fantastic. It's fascinating. It's amazing. And that's my jam, right? And I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, and everybody has their own different genre. That's the beautiful thing. There are so many books out there that I promise you there is a book that you would love if you give it the time and you do the searching. The searching's the hard part. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It's not all easy, but nothing good ever is. But reading and what it's given to me, I think it's the ultimate practice of empathy. You're able to really walk in somebody's shoes, and not only just, you're watching a movie, somebody's acting, you're seeing their emotions, and they're wearing their heart on their sleeve, right? But you don't get an insight into their mind, into their psyche, into their thought process. In a good book, you're able to literally walk the shoes of these people and learn from their experience, which I think is an absolutely incredible thing. And I've always loved a good story, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is because I love stories. I like sharing my stories. I like learning from others' stories. We'll be having guests in the future. Keep that in mind. But that is something for me that I've recognized that I've gained from books, not to mention word comprehension, the ability to articulate your thoughts in a clearer, more concise manner. There's a lot of things that books give you. And the thing that really changed for me, because in the beginning, I'd read 3 pages, I'd put it down, I'd check my phone, right? It's just attention span. I wasn't used to it. Then, you sit down, you make a conscious effort. Maybe I rip 10 pages. And then I go check my phone. But eventually, through time, you get better. You get better. You get better like anything. The more reps, the better you get. And then eventually you're cranking out chapters at a time, and you're sitting there and you're really painting a picture in your mind of these stories. That's when it changed for me. When it went from words on a page to like the theater in my mind's eye, and all of a sudden I'm watching these events transpire. I'm watching this happen, and it's the most captivating and engaging thing I'd ever really experienced up till that point. And I remember I'm a huge movie fan. I love movies. I love TV. And I remember growing up, people would always say the books are better than the movies. I always kind of thumbed my nose at them. I was kind of like, I disagree, respectfully. I love movies. I think movies are great. They're incredibly entertaining. But the thing that I took away from it, and the thing that I realized through time, is once I started reading these books and seeing them play out in my mind, I couldn't agree more with what they were saying. A book, it's just the depths you're able to go into a book is unparalleled than any other medium that I've experienced until this point. That could change. Technology is pretty wild, but for now, that is the case. And I think it's a noble pursuit too, because it's not meant to be easy, but nothing good ever is, as I've said before, and I will probably continue to say, as it's one of my favorite things to say. And also, it's when you're thinking about books and learning about these things, that whatever interests you, dive into that topic. But, knowledge is power, and these books hold the keys to the knowledge. And especially nowadays, we are in such an information-saturated society, digitally speaking, and it could, hypothetically, and I hope it never happens, if the internet gets wiped out, books will return as one of the most important things that we have available on this planet. I think about it when it comes to information and Google. It's like a lot of the information we used to retain in our minds is now offshored, essentially, to the tools we have at our disposal. We don't really retain as much information before because we have access to a tool that allows us to gain the information or have access to the information for a very brief amount of time. But you've seen it for people who are older now, and people used to memorize people's phone numbers because they didn't have a phone that had all their contacts in a centralized place. They needed to know the information, so they knew the information. And there's an example in like calculators in math class, early math classes when you're in school. It's like they don't want you relying completely on the calculator, because if you don't have the calculator after that, you won't be able to do the math. They want you to be able to do the math. And you see it in streaming. You have access to all of the music that's ever been recorded. Unbelievable. Fantastic. But if you don't really own that music, you simply have access to stream that music for as long as you pay your subscription. And that's why I love vinyl records, because you own the music. And that's why I love books, because you own the information. It's regardless, books battery doesn't run out. You don't run out of data. You don't need to connect to Wi-Fi. It's ink on a page. And there's something very, very beautiful about that. And I'd encourage you to give it a go. Try reading if you like it. If you don't, comment below. Tell me you hated it. It doesn't matter, but the pursuit is meaningful. So if that's something that you needed to hear, I hope you heard it. If you're an avid reader, let me know what you're reading in the comments. Always love a good book suggestion down below. And I think that is the first thing that I wanted to cover today, because knowledge is power, knowledge is important, and to remain curious and to want to learn more, I think there's no better avenue to do that than the literary avenue. Read a book, pick it up, see if you like it. If you don't, put it down, find another one. Don't feel obliged that you have to read this whole book from front to back, one page at a time, if it feels like torture. It's the author's job to keep you engaged. If they didn't, that's not the book for you, and that's fine. There's a lot of books out there. Same thing with this podcast. You might watch this, you might like it, you might hate it. If you love it, stick around. If you don't, wish you the best. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things. You can't please everybody. Not all books are made for everybody. Find your flavor, find what you love, find your passion, and pursue that. And I think an interesting thing that I heard a long time ago, it was, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine your mind is a bookshelf. And on that bookshelf, you can put whatever books, knowledge, you want in it. Whatever you expose yourself to, whatever your habits are, whatever you're reading about, you can learn anything. Especially in today's day and age, there's minimal barriers to entry. You can learn whatever you want to learn. The question then becomes, What do you want to learn? Think about it. Let me know. And I know that took up quite a bit of time, but what I want to talk about next is something that I think is very important, something that I think is not talked about a lot, and something that I think would be good for more people to hear. And and as I say, a lot of these things are things that I want to take in myself. A lot of these thoughts, a lot of these ideas are things that I want to adopt personally, and one of them being challenge your assumptions. We go through life, and there's a lot we don't know, and we fill in these gaps as best we can to feel safe with our environment, with the world around us, to make us feel like we have an understanding of what's going on. But through that process, because naturally nobody knows everything, there are going to be gaps in things you don't know, and that you're going to fill based on whatever you think is the most logical explanation to what's going on. And through that, you make assumptions about how other people feel about you, about how you feel about the world, about how things are going on, why things are going on. And through this time, I think we don't realize how many assumptions that are true, maybe false, that we assume is fact, and we operate in accordance to that. And that can be dangerous. You might, think, certain people are dangerous. You might think a certain country's not good. You might think a lot of things. There's a million different assumptions that we have on a daily basis. As menial as, I don't think that restaurant down the street is quality. Or I don't think that this person really cares about me because this and that. The mind's a powerful thing, and we believe the stories that we tell ourselves, for better and for worse. And a lot of the times, if you're operating with these assumptions and you never challenge them, they're never checked, and you let them run free, all of a sudden you're basing your life and decisions you make on faulty premises. And that's not a good thing, obviously. And I think to take healthy inventory of, what you believe, why you believe it, asking those kinds of questions, I think it's incredibly meaningful, and I think it's incredibly insightful, and I think it leads to a lot of really positive self-work that can help people generally. And it reminds me of this quote that I heard earlier this week that I thought was fantastic. It's from one of my favorite philosophers of all time, and it's Socrates. And what Socrates once said was, "The unexamined life is not worth living." There's a lot there. I think that's an incredible quote. And what I took from it, or what I thought about when I heard this, is a lot of times people are just going through the motions, doing things, doing activities, constantly stimulated, never really taking a chance to, slow down, smell the roses, and to really think about their lives, their decisions, their choices, and who, not only who they have been, but who they want to be. And when you take those times to take inventory, to take stock, to realize, am I doing the things that I want to be doing? Am I living my life in accordance to my values? Am I walking other people's path, or am I walking my own? To be able to look at yourself and to really examine who you are. It's the person you go to bed with every night and who you wake up with every morning. It'll always be you. The people around you might change, the context might change, your room where you live, you might move, a lot of things might change, but you're always going to be with you. And if you're able to endure the silence, to sit with yourself, and to think about who you are, who you want to be, and those kinds of things, that's what ultimately leads to positive change. But if you refuse to examine your life in that way, and if you just kind of get blown through life on the whims of your indulgences and your pleasures and your desires, you're going to find that, first of all, time goes fast. And before you know it, you're going to be wishing you maybe had some of those conversations and some of those thoughts a little bit sooner. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know, dude. I'm 26. I'm just trying to do the best I can. But from what I've gotten and from what I've gained through the minimal amount of introspection I've done, all things considered, at this point in my life, it has served me incredibly well, and I think it would help others too. So, wanted to share that. Think people could do a little better with that. And one of the last things that I wanted to discuss in the video today was a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, because it's something that I've struggled with for quite some time and something I'm trying to get better at, and that is slowing down. I think in my life, especially like professionally, if I have a very busy day at work and I have meetings in the morning, meetings in the afternoon, lunches, whatever, I find myself rushing from one activity to the next, filling that in-between time with noise, and just feel like the whole thing is just like a low level of just anxiety the whole time. Just push it forward, like how fast I complete these tasks is how well I complete these tasks. Like they're equal, which in reality, they're definitely not. And what I've noticed is the moments that I take a deep breath, slow down, smell the roses, smell the flowers, the beautiful flowers, things get better. It's like in Lightning McQueen talking to Doc in Cars. I love that movie. And it's like, sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. And if you're always going fast, you're missing things. A lot of beautiful things in this life, the little things that we just overlook time and time again. I mean, it's anything from like a tree. I love trees. Trees are amazing. It doesn't matter what kind of tree it is. It provides clean air for us to breathe. They look fantastic. Nature's the best architect there ever has been or ever will be. And you look at these beautiful structures and these different trees by form and function and how they're almost designed in the way that adapts to their environment. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. But people see trees all the time. So you're like, yeah, man, I've seen a tree before. What's the big deal? Same thing. I mean, you got planes in the sky. Show somebody that back in the day, they'd be freaking out. No, like humans achieved flight. Shout out to the Wright brothers. To assume that risk for that kind of technology, that kind of innovation, that kind of leap as a species, unbelievable. But people have seen planes. So you kind of take it for granted. You're like, all right, this is just how it is. You know what I mean? But we have to recognize that we do stand on the shoulders of giants. And there's a lot of people that allowed for tremendous comforts to be enjoyed today. And that's one of the little things. Slowing down and really thinking about all the beautiful things in your life. Thinking about how you want to be, how you want to behave. You know, anything from the planes in the sky to the trees on the ground to the birds and the bees, the sound of birds in the morning. There's so many incredible little things in this life that if you allow yourself, you get used to. And you get used to, all of a sudden they're not so special. It's just another thing. But if you do choose, because your mentality dictates your reality, if you do choose to look at these things for the gift that they are, good things happen. And that doesn't happen if you're rushing from one meeting to the next or one activity to the next, and you're constantly thinking about what's going on, what you did in the past, what you're doing in the future. You're everywhere but the present, and then you're robbing yourself of some beautiful experiences if that is the case. So, I mean, hey, I'm here to, speak my mind, to share a little bit of wisdom, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And just in summary, for us to recap here, I mean, pick up a book, read a book, find something you like. As we mentioned before, that bookshelf in your mind, what kind of information do you want to know? Because you are able to learn it. If you're disciplined and you're consistent, you can learn whatever you want to learn. That's the beauty of living in 2026. The con is there's a lot of distractions. You keep yourself on the rails, you find a good book, you'll appreciate it. Challenge your assumptions. The unexamined life is not worth living. Think about how you're living. You can think about the past, you can think about the future, but you got to be in the present always. And to challenge your assumptions and to think about what can change, what you maybe take for granted, and what could help you moving forward, I think is an incredibly valuable skill. And I think if you practice it, it only serves you, especially as you get older. And then ultimately, slowing down, enjoying the little things. And I think I'll close it out with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite movies of all time, and it is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you might miss it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wise Lemon Podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next week.